greatest father.
It's so easy to think, like I heard my dad used to talk about his dad and how certain things that he would say, right? And like my grandfather hopped a train from Iowa during the Depression to California and was very smart, educated himself, ended up working for a couple of engineering firms that worked on the space shuttle, the Concorde airplane, whatever. But I went to his garage, it was in California, very small, immaculate. And to the point is my dad would often relate the story how his dad would be like, look, jackass, look, jackass. And I got this impression that they had this horrible relationship. I talked to my dad later in life, and that wasn't it at all. And so it's the complexities of relationships, especially family relationships.
Yeah.
In this brief moment, really Scott like unpackages a bunch and kind of just leaves it there. Now you got to go think about it. But he unpackages.
What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to Post Finale. I'm your host, Ankit Madhira. I'm an actor and a musician who has not seen a lot of films, so to make my friends happy and potentially provide a new perspective on some popular films, I am on a quest to change that. I am not on this quest alone, however. This week, I am joined by business owner, wonderful father and husband, an avid movie watcher, and someone who also lived in London and loves Roman history, Michael Anderson. Michael, welcome onto the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you for responding to my post. And then
For
we
sure.
had a lovely conversation about, well, what little I don't know about this film. But it was a lovely conversation. And I was like, come on, you have insight. Let's go.
Let's go, for sure.
Let's have some fun. So yeah, I'm very excited. I have never seen it, ladies and gentlemen, starting this week, and it's probably going to take us 6 weeks to get through it just because it is a longer film. But we are starting with what I think a lot of people say is one of their favorite films of all time, or like their number one film of all time, even if it's like not their favorite per se. But we are watching Gladiator. I know very little. Before we jump into what little I know about this film, when did you first watch the film? Just some context for the listeners. When did you first watch it? Why do you love it? Why is it a film that you keep coming back to?
For sure. So I saw it when it was released at the theaters in the U.S. So this was in the year 2000. So, obviously big blockbuster, going to go see it. A lot of people talking about it ahead of time. You're talking about directed by Ridley Scott. So the Aliens, Blade Runner, those movies, big name director. Russel Crowe at the time was peaking in his popularity as the lead actor. So there were just a lot of reasons to go see it and the huge cast. So just very excited about it when it was coming out. And then boom, it released, went to the theater to see it, blown away, was amazed by it. And very thought-provoking, thought about it for days afterwards. And there's so much in the film that at different points in my life. So that would have been 2000. So I'd been 30 at the time. When I first saw it, I'm 54 now. And it means different things, or there's a depth of meaning that I find in it as I watch it at different points in my life.
Fair. Yeah. It is. So what little I know about the film is that it is a film that people have said, like, it's a film that even though they can come back to it, and even though it's like, an older film, I mean, not really, it's from 2000, but like it is still 2.5 decades old, which is wild to think about. But that those are just like, it's one of those films that they can come back to. They're never bored with that film.
Yeah.
And, just from what I understand, the storytelling is amazing.
Yes. Absolutely. So I just 100%. I was watched again recently, and I thought, man, a lot of films don't always age well. Mm-hmm. You watch them again, and you're like, okay. But this film ages really well, and even used some techniques that were new for the time, and still they pulled it off fairly well. It's not perfect. No, nothing's perfect, right? But it ages really well for sure.
That's good. Yeah, because I think it was a Braveheart that I watched, which was like another one of these like massive
Epic.
blockbuster
Mm-hmm.
epics.
Yep.
And I watched that earlier in the year, and I think it still aged decently well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was one of those where it was like, hey, like some of this like shouldn't have probably gotten through. Um,
Right.
and
For
it's
sure.
just like that's the way that it is. And the world changes, society
Right.
changes. I'm
That's right.
still of the notion that we should be able to laugh and poke fun at things
Yes.
while still being
100%.
respectful. You can be
Yes.
respectful, but funny is funny.
Funny is funny.
Funny is
Absolutely.
funny.
I agree for sure.
This movie, the other thing that I know, not funny. Um, from my understanding, it has to do with Rome and war, and I'm assuming gladiators.
Yes. Yes. It is light on the humor. It's light. You're absolutely, just from the little you're actually really correct. There is a few minor moments of humor, and I mean minor. The rest of the film is very serious. Like
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel like a lot of this film, the humor that I'm gonna find is me thinking something is funny, even though
yeah,
it's not
if it's
meant to
not
be
fun,
funny.
yes, definitely.
Like the delivery, everything very serious, and I'm
Yes.
just sitting there giggling. I'm like,
We'll be fine. I'm the same way because I think there's humor in everything,
oh
and
yeah,
my mind usually wanders, so it'll take something and spin off on it. So I'm right there with you for sure.
oh
Yeah.
100%. The only other thing that I know is I'm pretty sure this is where somebody yells, "Are you not entertained?"
Yes.
I have
Yes.
no idea in what context. I have
Yes.
no idea when they yell this. I'm assuming it's in a big arena. The main reason I know this is that there's a picture of me from high school doing
Mm,
like a similar thing with like a fake mustache on. We were having fun at a football game,
yes.
and then my friend photoshopped my head, took my head and stuck it on the body, and then like
That's
posted it in
amazing.
the band room, and just like with
It's
the "Are you not entertained?"
so I no
So,
spoilers, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder in the future, but that line was ad libbed by Russell
oh,
Crowe. That was not a scripted line. He
hey,
ad libbed that.
some of the best lines are never
Yes,
scripted.
that's for sure. Yeah, in the moment. In the moment.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like you were in the moment, and your friend was also in the moment.
I was just goofing off
Yeah.
at a
Yep.
football game in high school. And
That's amazing.
for context, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't on the football team. I was the drum major of the pep band. Um,
Nice. Nice.
I was in the stands.
Yeah. Love it.
So let's jump into it. Let's jump into this film. We start with some very eerie music, and
Mm,
then we get not narration, but we just get text. And I
mm,
appreciate that it's just the text. You don't need the
mhm,
narration in this
mhm,
sense. And all it says is at the height of its power, the
mm,
Roman Empire was vast, stretching from the deserts of Africa to the borders of northern England. Over
mhm.
1/4 of the world's population lived and died under the rule of the Caesars. And this is where I was slightly confused. I was like, wait, this film doesn't have Julius Caesar in it. I feel like it wouldn't work if Julius Caesar is the main character. And then I remembered that like Caesar was another term that they used for
Yes.
emperor,
Yes.
and it was like a weird thing, but I'm like,
Yep.
okay. Because now most of the time when people hear Caesar, it's always associated with Julius Caesar.
Right. It's almost like saying Julius Caesar Caesar, right?
Yeah.
It's like redundant. He is the emperor, so maybe he was really good at his job till they killed him. But anyway, it's just yeah, Caesar. I mean, I think people definitely today. I think they associate Caesar with Julius Caesar, Shakespeare, all of that, the play, right? So yeah, I think that's true. But Caesar was, like you said,
It
another
was
name for
just
emperor, if you will. Yeah.
It was just like a respectful term.
Yes.
Instead
Yes.
of calling them emperor, they would call them Caesar. It's
Yes.
like calling someone sir, but because of the power and the
Yes.
status that
Yes.
they just have a different term, like
Yes.
you would call a king your majesty.
That's right. That's right.
Caesar was just the term that they used
Exactly.
of respect.
Exactly.
The text continues. In the winter of 180 AD, Emperor Yeah, sorry. In the winter of 180 AD, Emperor Marcus Aurelius's 12-year campaign against the barbarian tribes of Germania was drawing to an end. Lovely. I did 100% forget very quickly that we were talking about Marcus Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, who is this Caesar? And um,
Mm-hmm.
they did tell me.
Right, right.
uh,
No, it is you know, if you don't have the again, like I said, I was so deep into Roman history, I loved it in the early part of my life that you know it all made sense to me seeing that. So remember I was in England and at 11, and then I see this movie at 30. So this was just like kind of a visual realization of the things I'd imagined, right,
yeah,
about the Roman Empire. You know, fictional or fact, regardless, it's pretty immersive. You know.
yeah. The final little bit says, uh, just the final stronghold stands in the way of Roman victory and the promise of peace throughout the empire.
Mm.
And we open in a wheat field. Someone's walking through, touching the wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Interesting shot. Don't really know why it was there because it is so vastly different than anything else. But I think I now have an understanding of why it might be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're going to see this come back at the end of the film. And I'll explain more of my thought process on that later once we
Sure.
hear more of the story. But as the opening shot of the film, I was like, huh?
Well, especially after they give you that description, you're thinking, "Oh, here we are, man. We're in the heat of it," and it's some guy walking through a wheat field, and you're like, you know, they build you
Yeah.
up, and then, yeah.
I'm just like, is he important? What's going on here? Why is a man walking through a wheat field?
Yeah.
um, and then we cut to a different man with armor and fur, and I was like, I feel like he's gonna be important. And he notices a bird, and we
Yes.
see the army in Germania, which looks desolate and burned down
Yes.
after the war. Like the land is not looking good right now.
Yeah.
And there's also a very old man present at the site, and I
Yeah.
was like, he seems important. My brain did not put together that he was the emperor.
Yes.
I was just like, why is the old man here just watching?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Just hanging out,
Just hanging
spectating.
out. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just the emperor. Like, if my brain functioned, we would have been good.
Right. It is disconcerting. I mean, I was thinking about you watch it for the first time, going, "This is going to be very confusing."
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So people are calling the man, and he noticed the bird, and they're calling him general. So I'm like, okay, this one's important. He's the
Yep.
general of the army.
Yep.
He's asking about somebody. I didn't quite pick up on who he was asking about, but they've been gone for 2 hours.
Yes.
Was it like the scouts?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, which you'll, yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah, yeah.
longer, a little bit later, you figure out why he was asking about him. Yep.
Right, right. And then they start talking about the catapults, and the catapults are, okay, even though it may be in danger of the cavalry. It's like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Catapults need to be where the catapults
So,
need to be.
what's interesting there, so that conversation is with Quintus. So, basically, the general's right hand guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not to give anything away, but you see this dynamic where his right hand guy is like, "Hey, I'm really concerned about the catapults." And the general's like, "It's acceptable. I understand the risks, and we're going to go ahead and go with it." You know.
Right.
So there's an interesting dynamic that's right there in that moment.
And it's interesting of like, hey, like, yes, there's risk, but two things. One, we're trusting the cavalry.
That's right.
And two, like, it's war. Like,
It's all right. It's not pretty.
it's not pretty. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, my friend.
Yeah.
And he has a line about that later as
Yeah.
well, that we'll go over in this
For
episode.
sure.
So someone comes running in on a white horse, and then there is someone that comes in with the beheaded head of what seems like the person that was on the white horse.
So if you recall his question about the scout,
I found the
that's
scout.
It had been 2 hours. What? I mean, it wasn't like it was miles away, right? It was
Right.
on the other side of the battlefield, and this guy's gone for 2 hours. So, what was happening to him? All we know is he comes back, and that rider on the horse is back with no head, and he's strapped to the horse. So the horse is returning the rider, and he's literally strapped to the horse. And then you see the gentleman with the head walk in.
Yeah. I found the opposing army. I found the scout. 10 out of 10. We're
You
doing
got it.
great. Now, I did like this line where I don't remember who said it, but someone just said, "People should know when they are conquered."
That was Quintus. That's his right hand man.
Oh, fair. Okay, that is
Yeah.
Quintus.
Well,
I just had the note and I didn't clock who said
did,
it.
did you note? Did you note the general's response?
Yeah, he just said, "Who are we conquering?"
Well, he also said he said, "Would you know, Quintus, if you were conquered?" He basically throws it back at him, not in a mean way, just in a kind of a questioning way, like you're saying they should know when they're conquered, but would you know if you were
That's
being conquered?
fair. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. That's a deep question.
that is a deep, deep question.
It's a deep
I've
question.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I hope I don't have to answer that.
Yes, also that.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
rather not be in that position. Yeah.
Would love to not be put in this situation.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. That seems like
100%.
good, healthy life choices.
Yeah. Don't get involved in massive land wars for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
Now there seems to be an upset dog. I just noticed the dog. I like
Yeah.
animals, so I tend to notice when there's an
Yeah.
animal in a film.
No, but so I think in a lot of films, obviously you're catching up, right? I don't know if you've heard of John Wick.
Oh,
With
I've heard of it. All I've understood is don't mess with this dog.
dogs figure prominently in that entire series, and I think dogs, being the expression "man's best friend," right? And you know, in fact, I think, and I'm not sure. I have to go back and check this, but I think he says on my signal, unleash hell. But I also think they were referring to the dog, not just the army, right?
Oh
So it's
yeah,
not because dogs are just. I mean, if you have a relationship with a dog, that dog will defend you. You know.
yeah.
So
He says that, and then the general and his dog, who I would like to think the dog's name is just Hell,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yes,
or Cerberus.
yeah, that would work as well.
Yeah,
Either of
yeah,
those
yeah.
are outstanding.
And let's be honest, Cerberus is just a cute little puppy who just wants a friend. It's not his fault he has 3 heads and is in the underworld. Um,
Not his fault at all.
not his fault. He just wants a friend.
That's
You
exactly
you
it.
be kind to the dog, he'll probably be kind to you.
100% for sure.
So the general, his dog, and another friend have gone to meet up with the cavalry,
Hmm.
which is like somewhere else. And then, yay, they get there, and he's like, 3 weeks from now, I'll be harvesting my crops.
Yes.
Imagine where you will be, and it'll
Yes.
be. And I was like, okay, quick question. What if they imagine they're going to be dead?
Right. And then he
What
addresses that. He addresses that, right?
He does. He's just like, then it'll be.
Yep. Yeah.
um,
And there's your one point. There's an early point of humor, kind of gallows humor,
yeah,
trenches, dark humor in the war. And then do you recall what he says?
I do not. I don't have that one written down.
He says, if you suddenly imagine yourself with the sun on your face, right, and a bright blue sky, and you're in a field. He goes, fear not, for you are already dead, and you're in Elysium, their heaven, right? He goes, you're already dead, so you got nothing to worry about at that point, right? And they all laugh because they're about ready to go into battle. So it's a little bit of that for folks that have been in tough situations, right? So gallows humor, dark. I use it to get to, I've had some rough recent years here in the past few years, and dark humor, gallows humor, if you will, battlefield humor, it helps. It helps to process that moment of trauma that you're either in or about to enter,
Oh yeah. I mean, I love dark humor. I will laugh. I will enjoy it. When my friends and I get together, there is a lot of dark humor. and it's just the way that it is.
Well,
Um,
sometimes I worry it's like a straight ticket to hell, but sometimes you just you have to laugh and I don't mean that literally. I just, you're just like, oh, I probably shouldn't laugh at this, but it's so fun. It's just funny, and
See,
humans are funny.
it's just like I know that this is messed up, but
Yes.
also, like we said, funny is funny.
Funny is absolutely. That's true. Yeah,
And for
exactly.
me, funny wins. Like, you can still learn a lesson and still be reprimanded for it. But at the end of
That's
the
right.
day, I'll be like, okay, two things. One, hilarious. Two, you
Yes.
can't say that.
What, and you can't, but the thing is with humor, you can get away with saying things that you couldn't if you said it seriously, right?
Oh,
So when,
right. It's like when I'm teaching the kids, right?
yes,
And things
yes,
like that. It's like, okay, like, look, like, guys, I know that you also know that this is very funny.
right.
However, we can't say this.
Yes,
Like, I
yes,
understand the funny. So, like, good joke.
right,
However,
right. Time and place,
time
right?
and place. This is not the time and
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
just, you can't
yeah.
do this in a, educational
Yeah.
setting.
Setting.
You do this on
Exactly.
the playground, I do not care. Fine.
Right,
Enjoy.
right.
Have fun.
Yeah, it's funny. So this was 2 years into, my wife and I actually worked with a youth group. We started in 1998, I believe. Yeah, so this was 2 years in. So we had a lot of those moments where, like, guys, I get it, but we're in this setting, like maybe church or something. This is not the place for those jokes. I mean, it's funny, and the kids were hilarious. I always laugh. The problem was I was laughing with them, so I don't know how much of a good role model I was,
Oh,
but I'm
yeah.
totally with you.
Fair
Very,
enough.
yeah,
So, speaking of that war, that's kind of happening. It's not really that important. They win, yay! I mean, I never saw a signal be given, but I guess the signal was given.
yep.
And archers have flaming arrows. They have flaming catapults. The old man, who's the emperor, is just watching from a distance
Just
while
still
the jokes are
watching.
fired. I was just like,
Um,
I get him not fighting, but who is he? Why do we keep cutting to him?
with
Brain
with
not processing.
with almost no affect either. He's just kind of like he's just staring at this thing, not like yay or oh or just nothing, just almost like flatlining looking at it.
I do love the deadpan. Also,
Yeah,
is this? I'm just thinking about. Is this the same actor as the King in Braveheart?
no, so that's Patrick McGoogan, I think his name is, or McGoohan, or I probably messed it
Okay,
up. It's a different person. This is actually, and it's great that you brought up. This is actually Richard Harris.
this
So
is Richard Harris.
yes, that's Richard Harris. Now we're getting it close to the end for Richard Harris, right?
Right.
So Richard Harris, I mean, you talk about his role in this film and the relevancy to everything else that happened then, but also now. So he played another lead king. He was King Arthur in Camelot, the musical from 1972, I believe.
Hmm.
So he has that type of history. Also, this new movie that came out, and I'm sure you've heard of it, even if you haven't seen it, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. It's a follow on to the movie Beetlejuice.
Right.
The song in that features predominantly, there was another song that featured in the first movie, but in this one, it's a song called MacArthur Park. And it was basically written by this guy who broke up with his girlfriend, and he recalls all the scenes in a park. People thought it was all made up. He's like, no, we saw a cake in the rain. It literally was a cake. It started raining and all these things. But Richard Harris is the person that sang that on a
Oh.
1968 album. Richard Harris is Irish, right? And he actually sang that song. That's how it got released. Many people have covered it since, and it was featured in Beetlejuice, his version, and I believe I want to say Diana Ross or a disco cover version of it as well. And so this is Richard Harris, and finally he was the original Dumbledore in Harry
Yeah.
Potter. So, and then he passed away, and then Michael Gambon took over. So Richard Harris has a lot of threads in that. And finally, he and another actor, and I won't name him yet to not spoil it, but he and another actor were well known. Him and Richard Harris, this other actor, and two other actors were well known for being raging parties, raging alcoholic, just wild men of their time. There's a book called Hellraisers about them, and Richard Harris is one of the four. During their time, when they were very big in the 60s and 70s, There's a book called Hellraisers that talks about their life adventures. So Richard Harris has a lot of emphasis in that movie, and then you look at what's happening now, and just a lot of connection points with him. So yeah, that's actually Richard Harris for sure.
Fair. I mean, I know that he's a very versatile actor. I just never clocked that that was him. But
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Anything I've seen him in, I've loved him.
Abs. Oh my
Like
gosh, love him.
he is an incredible talent, and so yeah, I just didn't clock that that was
Yeah,
him.
very
Uh,
very natural actor. Just
mhm.
like you go like he's that in that moment he's that role, but he doesn't seem like he's trying to do it. It just flows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was, as an actor, the best advice that I ever got, and something that still resonates and something that I still try is stop thinking.
Yes. Love it.
Um, the moment you stop thinking,
Yes.
it's great. But the moment you think, everyone
Mm,
can tell that you're trying, and it
trying.
sucks.
Wow.
Um, and so it's just like, yeah, like it is a big thing. And
Who
like,
gave you that advice? Who told you that?
one of my directors one time in grad school of
Mm,
one of the courses I was doing, and he was just like, "Hey, stop thinking,
mm.
because you know it. You're just thinking yourself out of actually doing it.
That's
Just
so
do it."
cool. You know the actor Michael Caine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was him. He said, "Let the camera catch you. Just
Hmm.
fall and let the camera catch you." Something to that effect, where it was like, again, don't try, don't think, just be, you know? So that's
It's easier
amazing.
said than done.
At 100, dude. Even look, they've done tons of studies, and I like to read different studies. But the moment you have somebody watching you, you're prone to failure.
Yeah.
It's your mind. You can't tune out the fact that there's a part of you that knows somebody's watching you in this moment, or being recorded in this moment, or whatever it is. You know,
And
it's not easy.
it's also the thing of like, the moment that you know that someone's watching you, you try to do more than you need to do
Mm,
a lot of times,
wow.
because you don't need to necessarily do a lot, but you feel like you need to do more to
Mm,
get whatever emotion it is across, and it's like, no, like sometimes the
wow.
simplicity is the best thing.
Love
Like,
it.
sometimes all you need to do is a slight drop in the shoulders, and that's enough.
Mm,
Like especially on film, it's plenty. And
mm.
sometimes in live theater, even though it might be a massive venue and someone in the back isn't going to notice it, they'll notice it.
That's also true there. You're saying in both settings.
In both settings, like sometimes just keeping it simple is better.
Mm,
You don't have
love
to
it.
do as much,
That's so cool.
because, that's just not the case. Sometimes the subtlety works, and sometimes you do need to be bigger. And in live theater, like, some of your movements do need to be bigger,
Hmm.
but they still need to create a pretty picture. Uh,
Right. Not
so
not not overdo, not overshadow everything else.
exactly.
Yeah. Very cool.
But anyway,
Yeah.
back to old man watching with zero emotion. The cavalry is charging in. They're with the general. For some reason, the soundtrack in this moment reminded me of "He's a Pirate" from Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was like,
Yes.
"Ah, it's half
Yes.
tempo."
Thank you. I'm so glad because I'm like, that sounds exactly. And it gets used again later. No spoiler there. They replay that, and I'm like, that sounds just like the Pirates of the Caribbean music. I'm telling you, somebody like later, right? Because Pirates came later, right?
Pirates came later. Hans Zimmer heard this and was like, and we double time, cut and paste.
Wait, did Hans do the music for Pirates as well?
Hans did the music for Pirates.
Reusable content. He was ahead of his time. He was all over it.
Wait, did Hans do the music for
I
this?
think I'm almost. Oh, did he not?
I don't know. I
I'm
don't.
gonna I'm gonna live fact check that. You keep going. I'm gonna
All right.
fact check that real quick.
Sounds good. I am pretty sure he also did Pirates. So live fact check that while we continue.
Yes. Okay.
So the general's knocked off his horse. He fights from the ground. He
Yes,
kills
sir.
many people. He does pause when he sees a blonde man. I don't know why. The next thing we see, he's fighting again. The dog, meanwhile, getting in on the action. Let's go. The camera keeps cutting, but it's very clear that the Romans are winning the battle. And, hey, look, they win. And the old man continue blank stare watching. And I just go, I don't trust him because my brain hasn't put together that this is the Emperor yet.
You have no connection to this guy. You're just like, why is he here?
Yeah.
The funny thing is why is he there?
I don't know.
The only thing I can think is it goes back to that text at the beginning where this is the end of a 12-year campaign to finally bring the whole thing together. And he's like, I'm showing up for this one. Right? It's the only thing I could think of because otherwise I wouldn't expect it. Emperor's like, go get it done. I'll see you when you're done. I'm not going out there. But he's there for some.
He's there. But I'm just like, who is this? I don't like him. I don't trust him.
So I've got an answer.
Okay.
Gladiator 2000, soundtrack composed by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerard. A lot of people think the song with the girl vocalizing was actually Enya, who was big at the time. It wasn't. It was Lisa Gerard. But Hans Zimmer. And then you go over to Pirates, Hans Zimmer. The dude reused his own stuff. Come on. There's no way. That is the same music.
Woohoo!
Yoo-hoo! Good for, hey, kudos to Hans. Absolutely outstanding.
Look. Two times that you've just created a fantastic soundtrack, and you were like, well, this could work. We just got to modify it slightly.
What was he thinking? People would forget. So when did the first Pirates come out?
2003?
Yeah, it wasn't that much. It wasn't like it was years. It wasn't like a decade later, right? Hold on. The Black Pearl. Wait a minute. One second. Because this is fascinating to me. I'm glad you noticed, though, because I was like, is that? No.
Because, and like, that's the thing is like, I teach acting now to kids and like I work in theaters and things like that. But then the kids are just like, oh, like, this. And I'm like, no, guys, like I was never a theater kid. I was a band kid. I'm a music kid.
Yes.
Like that's my first love. Like I got into acting because I just enjoyed it, figured out I was kind of good at it. And so I kept doing it. I liked storytelling.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned that, and that's absolutely fascinating because I went from sports. I played baseball for 2 years at a smaller school. Then I transferred to, so here in Texas, I was at a school in the high school, there was probably a few hundred kids. And then I went to a school where the high school was 3,000. And so I was dealing with guys, I'm only 5'3", but I was dealing with guys that were huge, freshmen, 220, just massive. And I'm like, I play sports here, I'm going to get killed, right? So I got into acting, which I'd done in minor ways, right? When I was in London, I was in a pantomime, right? And I played the evil guy with twisting the mustache, and it was crisp. Oh, I loved it. And in fact, my parents caught me one time. Somehow I got this sequined hat, and I was singing That's Entertainment or something in the mirror. And then they proceeded to tell that story when I graduated, which I'm like, thank you so much for sharing my humiliations. So it was, it's like, thanks, guys. But no, I got into acting. I did 12th Night. And so I got into all these things in my junior and senior year and loved it. Played Teddy in Arsenic and Old Lace, right? Charging the hill, San Juan Hill up the stairs, and was, what was his name? I can't remember his name. The antagonistic character in 12th Night. Where's the yellow tights? I've completely spaced. Anyway, did really well.
I know who you're talking about because I have.
He was so self-absorbed and angry. He was a fool. Why can't anyway?
I don't know. I auditioned for the role as well, and
did you
remember it? Yeah.
I got awarded
for that role a few times.
You did so. UIL won. I assume they have that everywhere, but here in Texas, UIL, so the University Interscholastic League, right? 1-act play. You get 45 minutes to do a 3-hour play, and I actually got Best Actor for that role.
Congrats.
And I cannot at all remember his name. So
anyway,
I wore yellow
Black
tights.
Pearl.
That's all I remember. Huh?
Fair enough. Anyway, Black Pearl.
Yes.
Find the year.
Oh, Black Pearl, 2003. Yeah, you're right. 3 years later, he uses the same music.
Let's go. He's doing it. Now we cut away from the battle. I'm assuming we won. And there's a caravan. There's a man who asks if he's really dying. And I'm like, are you talking about the Emperor? Are you talking about the Caesar? There's a lady who says that he's been dying for 10 years. I'm like, cool. Commodus says that, he wouldn't have sent for us if he, really was dying, or the senators, like he wouldn't have sent for us. And the lady says that after 2 weeks on the road, she is tired of his scheming and her head is hurting. Brother sister is the vibe that I'm getting here. I'm like, this is not how the wife in this time would talk to a husband.
Right.
So I'm like, this is definitely the sister.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're on it. I think you're correct. Yep.
yeah. They smile and laugh at each other. Commodus says that he has made his decision and he will announce it. He will name me. The first thing that I shall do is honor him with games worthy of his majesty. And I was like, and this is where I was like, name him the new dictator? No, that's not the right term. What's the right term? And then I spent a humiliating amount of time remembering the word emperor.
Hmm.
The lady
Or
says
Caesar.
or Caesar. Yeah, just woo. Um, yeah. The lady says that the first thing that she's gonna do is have a hot bath, and they almost get to the battleground, and the emperor is at the front, and the wounded are still coming in. They've been gone for 19 days. Sure,
Hmm.
why not? Maximus is told by the old man that he has defended his honor yet again, hopefully for the last time. And
Hmm.
then when Maximus says, "There is no one left to fight, sire," he responds with, "There is always someone left to fight,"
Yeah.
which is very true. And this is where I clocked, oh, I can probably trust this dude. He's the emperor, isn't he?
Nice. What marker is that? You're what, 10, 12,
I'm
15
a
minutes in?
solid like 15 minutes into this film.
There you go.
um, Maximus just wants his reward to be going home, and the old man, who is Caesar, uh, and he's like, the crowd honors Maximus for being Rome's greatest
Hmm.
general.
Hmm.
Commodus arrives and says that he will sacrifice 100 bulls to honor his triumph. And Commodus, for context, the Caesar's son,
Yes.
and Caesar, you know, just tells him, "Hey, save the bullets, honor Maximus. He
Right.
won the war."
Right. Right. So, right. If you watch the eye glance, and again, this you watched it once, right? So tension already starts building, right?
Oh
Commodus is
yeah,
what we used to say is like Commodus is like a callus. He shows up after the work's done, right? So the work's been done, and he's riding in like triumphant. And it's like, dude, you missed it all. And so you start seeing this tension start to rise, and the emperor keeps deferring to Maximus. It's Maximus. It's Maximus. And this is his own son, right? And he's like, but Maximus. And he's like,
yeah.
but father. And he's like, but Maximus. And you're like, oh, Lord, here we go. We're
I
going to have
mean,
some fun
like,
here.
Commodus salutes him and thanks Maximus,
Right.
but like I was just like, he is not happy about this.
No,
It
no.
reminded me of the line in Hamilton where Hamilton says to Lafayette in one
Yeah.
of the rap battles,
Yes.
or "Don't lecture me about the war you didn't fight in it."
Fight in it. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I
Yes.
was like, "Ooh." Now,
Yeah. Ouch.
yeah, Caesar on the other hand is just like, it's time for us to leave. And he gets on his horse and says to Maximus, "So much for the glory of Rome." Now, we're going to take a quick intermission and then we will come right back.
Great.
But just taking care of some housekeeping things. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all enjoying this episode of Post Finale. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if you enjoy the episode and you are having a good time, please make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube and hit that like button. And please be sure to follow the show if you're listening on any other app like Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It doesn't matter where you're listening for us. It just means so much that you are listening to this episode. And thank you all so much. It really does help out the show and the channel. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Now, if you are enjoying the content and you want to gain access to more content, you can do so by signing up for our Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we have an update for our patrons. And the update is that Lucy Sadler, thank you so much for upgrading to production manager. It really means a lot to us. Thank you so much. And for anyone else that wants to sign up, gain access to bonus content, you can see tier lists, you can see notes that we have, some bonus videos, some bonus audios, different things like that. You can suggest films that we do. All sorts of things like that can be found on our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/coopforge. So that's patreon.com/CO_OPFORGE. And thank you so much to anyone who is even considering this. It really does help us out a lot, and thank you. Now, be sure to also follow us on social media for Post Finale. You can find us at Post Finale Pod on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also follow Co-op Forge, where we post a lot of content as well, not just about post finale, but for all the shows that we host here on Co-op Forge. So that includes Seattle Across the Pond, and that includes Flip the Scripts. So if you want to follow that one on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, it is at Co-op Forge. So at CO_OPFORGE. And it really does help. The best way to help the show in a non-monetary way, if you want to do that too, is just to talk about the show. Word of mouth is the best way to help grow the show. Just reach out to a friend and be like, hey, you love films, or hey, I know that you need a reason to watch more films. Check out this show where the host is an actor who hasn't seen anything and he's confused most of the time on what's going on. It's silly. It's a fun time. He's really humble. It's a fun, great way to help the show grow. And talk about us on social media. It really, really does help. Thank you all so much to anyone who has done this in the past, anyone who will do this in the future. It really does mean the world to us. But that's enough of me rambling on. Once again, if you want to follow us on social media, it's at Post Finale Pod and at Co-op Forge, CO_OPFORGE. And if you want to sign up for the Patreon, again, there is zero pressure to do so. Listening to the show means so much to us. But if you want to do that, it can be found at patreon.com/co-op-forge. So that's patreon.com/CO_OPFORGE. And let's get back to the show. Okay, so we're back, and Maximus is now at camp, and he seems to be in the infirmary. We're seeing people get bandaged up, stumped, etc. Get whatever medical treatment they need at the time. And there's no score in this moment.
Yes.
You just hear the screams
Yes.
of these patients.
So I think that's interesting for two reasons. One, we've repeated a theme now where early on you see general, and he's a man of the people. Like he's connected to his troops, right? He's not sitting up. He's not like the emperor sitting up, and nothing against the emperor. Obviously he's old.
He's an old man, right?
You don't necessarily want him down there, but he's clearly a man of the people. He's clearly connected to his troops, and then you see him again now going into the infirmary and touching, being connected to people again. It's a lot's been said about the power of leaders, and let me touch your hand, let me take your hand. Politicians will do the double grip, right? Hand on hand, right? And so he's touched, and I think his is all genuine. It's very genuine in this character of being connected. The second thing, though, is the score, not having a score and just the screams. Ridley Scott is well known for, I'm going to immerse you in the reality of it. Now, that being said, historically, this movie's a mess, right? It's not correct. There's a lot that they do for the sake of the story that I won't go into it here, but people can go look at it. It's not correct from the battle. It's not correct from the characters, Aurelius and Commodus and all. None of it is nearly correct at all. In fact, Maximus is not even Maximus. He's actually somebody else in history. So
lovely.
Yeah, but dude, Ridley Scott's film, even if he's imagining a future, Blade Runner, right? Or we've gone to Mars. He did The Martian as well, which is, if you ever get a chance, Matt Damon.
I've seen that one.
Amazing. I mean,
great film.
And the great thing I love about Ridley is he will use CGI. In fact, he used it in this film, and I won't spoil anything why he used it, but he used it in this film. It was actually cutting edge at the time, but he still builds real sets. So you feel the realness and you feel immersed. Yeah. And so when you're watching the battle, so whether it's historically correct or not, and he'll use the violence, but it's never like, I don't ever feel like it's egregious or just salacious. I want you to feel like you were there. And I feel like that is why he has no score and he has the screams, and there's pain, there's suffering going on. And I think it's just a Ridley Scott thing where he wants you to be in that moment, whether it's in the future, right, which is imagined, or the past, which is kind of drawing on the references from the past.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a lot of directors that I would love to work with, and pretty much any director I'm willing to work with. Like, hi, directors, hit me up.
Hey, here I am.
Hello. He's very, very close to the top of that list.
Yes.
Just because any movie that I have seen of his, I love.
Yes.
I've never been disappointed. I mean, there are ones that I just,
Yeah, right,
prefer over the
right,
other, but that's
right.
my taste as a person and has nothing to do with his storytelling. Like his storytelling,
Yes.
impeccable. And then it just comes
Mm,
down to taste of people,
yes.
and that's
Right.
something that you can't control.
For sure. Not all right. I haven't resonated with all of his films, but of the films that have resonated with me, I've watched them time and time. They're the films other than like The Godfather, right, which is one of my top, right, the first one, Francis
Sure.
Ford Coppola, yeah. But Ridley Scott's films, Aliens, Prometheus, Martian, Gladiator, I keep coming back to those films time and time again, for
Yeah.
sure.
I did see something about a review on Alien, and I don't know if this is true or not, so this might just be a fun tidbit
Mm,
for the audience that has seen Alien.
yeah.
But it's just Alien is just a bunch of people not listening to the smart woman, and then everyone
Yes.
dying except the smart
Smart
woman.
woman. So Ridley Scott is well known. Even in this film, the one lead female character, which is the sister,
Yeah.
is actually a very strong person, and it's spoken about. And again, not to spoil it, so very strong person. And in I don't know if you knew this about Alien, the whole thing with the alien and coming out of the stomach was Ridley Scott asking himself was how can I help a man understand what it'd be like to have something living inside of him and give birth? That was his thought process behind Alien was what would it be like? And I love it that the smart woman's saying, "Hey guys," and nobody listens, and then she's the only one that gets out at the end. And that's it. He always has strong female characters despite the circumstances they're in. So
Yeah, I
love
mean,
it.
just because I also like know that Alien's probably not one that I'm gonna do on this show, but I'll watch it at some point. When I
Yeah,
have this thing called
yeah,
free
yeah,
time.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Because you know a lot. You sounds like you already know quite a bit
I
about it.
know quite a bit about Alien, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I hope I
Um,
didn't spoil that for you. I think were already leaning that.
yeah, I already know a fair bit about it, and
Yeah.
people have talked about it a lot around
It's
me.
it's it's hard not to hear about Alien. I mean, you'd have
Yeah.
to like sequester yourself.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm surprised I haven't heard about this one. So, that
Right.
being said, so Maximus, heads out. He seems to join the others outside of the medical tent. The music picks back up again, and Maximus says that he's going home to his wife, his son, the harvest. Quintus can't believe this. Maximus tells him that dirt cleans off a lot easier than blood. It does.
Yes.
Commodus is, introducing us to Senator Gaius and Senator Falto. I think
Falco.
Falco. There we go. My notes app changed it from a C to a T. I don't know why. um, Gaius is said to pour honey in your ear and you'll wake up saying Republic, Republic. And
Mm,
Gaius is just like, what's wrong with that? Rome was founded with as a republic. And
hmm.
he's just like, well, in a republic, the Senate has the power. And I'm like, please tell me Commodus doesn't get power. We don't need this. It's going to be really annoying that he does. Now,
Mm.
which gives me an answer of how this film is going to go. They ask Maximus where he stands, and Maximus is just like, look, the luxury of being a soldier is that I have the luxury of looking my enemy in the eye.
Mm.
Commodus takes him away, and there's a woman watching from a tent. It's the sister, and Commodus tells him that he's going to need people like him. He knows how to command. He gives
Mm.
orders. Orders are obeyed. Battle is won.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
senators, they scheme, they squabble,
Mhm.
they flatter, they deceive. They
Mhm.
must save Rome from the politicians. And I'm
Mhm.
like, aren't you one of them? You're a politician as well, my friend.
Yes.
Don't get too comfy. Which is literally what is said because Maximus says that, look, once your father releases me, I'm going to go back home. And
Yeah.
Commodus is like, well, no one's earned that more, but don't get too comfortable. I may call on you before long.
Right.
And Maximus, don't look too happy about that one.
No.
He's
No.
like, no.
He and I think it's in one of those scenes where he's talking. Has he spoken to the emperor at this point? Have you?
He's like the big conversation.
Yeah, not
He's
yet.
about to.
He's about to. Okay,
He's
well, I'll leave
about
it. I'll
to.
leave it for that then.
Okay. Sounds
But
good.
yeah, you're tracking for sure. This is you can
Yeah.
see some tension building, right?
Oh
Some
yeah.
yeah.
Maximus and Commodus feel like those coworkers that absolutely do not get along, but are cordial.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like,
It's seething on the inside, smiling on the outside, you know?
right. It's like, I hate you, but at the same time, I understand that you also have a very important role in this
Yes.
company, and I
Yes.
can't piss you off.
What's funny is, and I think this is true, I've often said I can work with just about anybody, even people I don't like. People that I don't like, I can still work with them because there's a separation there, right? It's like we understand our roles. Now, would I hang out on the weekend with them? Probably not.
Probably not.
But I could work with them, you know?
Yeah, I can usually work with them.
Yeah.
Be a professional. When
Yeah.
you're in the room, you work, and then leave.
And then leave.
And then leave.
Exactly.
Just,
Leave.
be cordial, be kind,
Yes. And then
and
on your
then
way.
you can vent to your friends
That's right. That's
about them
right.
later.
That's right. That's right. Time and place, as we said
Time and
before.
place. Time and place. And sometimes you just got to call your friend and be like, "Hi,
Like,
I need to
dude.
vent." Why?
Yes.
Well, because I'm about to walk into a meeting and
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but-
can't have this energy be coming through.
right.
So
Yes.
like
Exactly.
I just listen to me vent for 15
Yes.
minutes. Thanks,
Yes.
bud. See you later.
Those are your good friends, man. That'll just be like, dude, start puking. I'm here. Just go ahead. Let it loose.
Just yeah. Just like,
Yep.
oh, you need, yeah, okay, I'll shut up and listen.
Yep.
Like, I'm
Yes.
making dinner. Go.
Go.
Anyway, so we find out that the sister's name is Lucilla. Yes.
Yes.
And she apparently hasn't forgotten him. Did she have a crush on him? I don't know. Like, sure, why not?
Yeah. Something in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally all I got. I'm sure that we will learn more.
Yes.
Caesar goes into a tent. He sees his daughter and is just like, "Oh, if only you were born a man, what a Caesar you would have made."
Great line. Great
And
line.
I'm like, "Oh, that hurts."
Yeah.
Because like, and this is where like I reclocked that like Caesar was just a term for
Yes.
emperor,
Yes.
and not like just their last name.
Right. Right.
And I was like, oh, right, because she's a woman, she can't be ruler,
She
even
can't.
though she
Yeah.
would probably be the best one.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes. And yes. Yeah.
yeah. Caesar says that, your brother is going to need you more now than ever.
Now. Right.
And, enough of politics. Let us imagine that you are a loving daughter. Is that what he says?
Yes. That
You
you
are
are
a
a loving
loving
daughter.
and I am a loving father.
I think he
And then
says good father. I think he actually says that I'm a good father. He says, let us imagine that you are a loving daughter and I'm a good father.
And I'm a good
But
father.
he's already copping to the fact that,
He's like, look, I understand that I'm not the best.
That's right.
But I appreciate that. I appreciate that as the emperor, he's like, look, I've made mistakes.
Yes.
And I have made mistakes with my own kids.
Yes.
Like, he's not. And yeah, when he was younger, maybe he wouldn't have acknowledged that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But now he's older. He understands that he is towards the end of his life.
You're picking up on a huge piece of this is that, again, a little bit of foreshadowing, which we won't go into right now, a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of that. I'm older now, and I've had that experience where it's like the attitude that I would carry when I was younger has significantly changed now that I'm older, right? And more reflective and more contemplative. And, but also, here's the thing with Marcus Aurelius, and this is just real life. I mean, this is real Marcus Aurelius, right? So fairly well known. He was a Stoic philosopher. But he didn't really write to publish. He wrote for himself to examine his own self. And it wasn't until after he died that they discovered his writings, a lot of his writings, and they published it as a book called Meditations. And it's a lot of Stoic philosophy, which is very big today. A lot of people emphasize Stoic mindset. But he really wrote it for himself to guide himself. But again, real life, not
I mean, like, that's fair. I mean, from what I do remember about Roman history, Marcus Aurelius was one of the better Caesars.
Yes. Yes.
In the time, and like,
there were some that were not. For sure.
But he was one of the ones that was more well respected, and generally people did like him. Like, anyone in a position of power, you're gonna have people being like, he was terrible.
Right.
It's the way that it works.
Yes.
but he was one of the more respected ones. And I
Yes.
think, like, they do a good job of showing that in this film. Like, yeah, like he is still respected, and
Hmm.
there is still that, hey, like, I understand things
Yes.
have changed and I'm
Yes.
not the best, but like I tried. And
Yes.
I did like her line. She just goes, "Pleasant fiction, isn't it?" uh,
No
but
varnish. She calls it what it is.
and that's where I was like, I see why you would have been a good Caesar. You call it
Yes.
like it is.
Yes.
But she's willing to indulge. She's like,
Yes.
yes, let
Yeah.
let us. I still love you, even
It,
though you might not have been the greatest father.
it's so easy to think. Like I heard, my dad used to talk about his dad and how certain things that he would say, right? And like my grandfather hopped a train from Iowa during the Depression to California
Hmm.
and was very smart, educated himself, ended up working for a couple of engineering firms that worked on the space shuttle, the Concorde airplane, whatever. But I went to his garage. It was in California, very small, immaculate. And to the point is my dad would often relate the story how his dad would be like, look, jackass, look, jackass. And I got this impression that they had this horrible relationship. I talked to my dad later in life, and that wasn't it at all. And so it's the complexities of relationships, especially family relationships.
Yeah.
In this brief moment, really Scott like unpackages a bunch and kind of just leaves it there. Now you got to go think about it, but he unpackages it a lot in just a few short lines of that dynamic.
Yeah,
It's pretty
Ridley,
amazing.
I didn't think I was getting philosophical homework when I was watching your film.
But you were,
I
you
thought I was
were.
getting normal homework. It's fantastic when I tell my friends what I'm trying to do for work, and they're like, "We chose wrong." Like my dad, just like anytime he sees me and like I'm just doing this type of work,
Yeah,
he like pauses his meeting, reminds his colleagues of just like, guys, we all chose the wrong profession.
love it, love it. That's so awesome.
Now, the camp changes, and this is the final scene that we're going to talk about today because it's the final scene of the film that I've seen so far.
Yes,
And it's now snowing. Did a lot of time pass, or just like, is it
two,
like the
two.
next day?
Well,
Like,
no, I think two things. I think if you recall back what you first saw early on, is furs and all. It was cold there.
it
They were
was
in
cold.
basically northern Europe to some degree, right? And the time of the year. But also he does allude to this fact that I think a lot of times we think, okay, war's over, pack up, let's go. You have to move a massive amount of people, a massive distance. That doesn't happen in a day. And they've just fought a battle. So some are wounded, some are dead, some are
Oh,
exhausted
they're probably not leaving for at least a week
at a minimum,
before. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
At a minimum. So
I
even when
was
you,
just trying to clock like the time between the conversations that
yes,
just happened to this
yes,
new day, like,
yes.
because it wasn't very clear on
It-
if it was like the next day, if it was a
yeah,
week,
I
and I
always
don't.
took it as I always took it as the next day, and that it happened to be
Yeah,
sunny the day before, and then it was snowing the next
yeah,
day,
yeah,
just
yeah. I
where they
mean,
were.
like,
But
yeah,
it
I
could be
mean,
either way for sure.
cool. Okay, yeah, I just wasn't clocking.
There's definitely some time gaps in this,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Um, and so I just
You-
wanted to make sure because I was like, I don't think it like I could tell not a massive amount of time has
right. But
passed.
sometime
But
perhaps,
some time has passed.
yeah.
Yeah. So Max goes to collect his horse or say hi to his horse. Couldn't really tell. He sees Commodus training without a shirt. Oh no. It's cold. He's going to get frostbite. Caesar, meanwhile, has sent for Maximus, and Maximus, arrives as one does when the emperor calls you.
Emperor
And
called, yeah.
Caesar's just like, why are we here? And he's just like, for the glory of the empire. And Caesar says that he remembers. He points at a map and says that this is the world which I created.
Yes.
25 years, conquered, spilt blood, expanded the empire. And since becoming Caesar, he's known 4 years of peace,
Mm,
4 years without war.
yeah.
He brought the sword and nothing more. And I was
Mm,
like, ah, thank you, Ridley.
yeah.
More introspective philosophy
Yeah.
within me.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Caesar wants to talk as men, and he's just like, look, talk as men. Like, tell
Right.
me what is on your mind,
Right.
right? And so Maximus does. He's like, look, 5,000 of my men are out in the freezing mud. 3,000 of them are bloodied and cleaved. 2,000 will never leave this place.
That's right.
I will not believe they fought and died for nothing. They fought for you. They fought for Rome.
Right.
Caesar responds with, "What is Rome, Max?"
Mm.
Maximus responds with saying that, I have seen much of the world. It is brutal, cruel, and dark. Rome is light.
Mm.
Yet you have never been there. You have not seen what it has become. And I'm just like, what? Like, Maximus, like, how have you not been to Rome?
So you caught on, and we won't spoil it because it comes up not too far after this. I had the same thought when I'm like, even watching it again, I'm like, how has this cat not been to Rome? How is that even possible?
How is it possible that he is the general of the army and has never
Never
been to
been to
Rome?
Rome, and so they cover that later. We won't go into it because
Okay.
there's some important pieces that are not only part of the story but part of the imagery. And so we can't go into it right now, but it's a great question. And even having watched it many times, watched it again recently, and I'm like, oh, this hurts my head. Because I forgot some things, So,
As you
you're,
do.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, but
Yeah.
for sure, yeah,
Now,
good question. Why?
I'm just
How?
like, how? How? Like, I understand not having been there for years.
Yes, right. They've been at war, right? So get it
For you might not have been there for the last 12 years
right, but
because it's been the 12-year conquest or
that's
whatever,
right.
right?
But
So I get
never.
that, but never.
Yes, love
Especially
it.
with something that is said later,
Right.
which it doesn't fully matter, but the context, but like Maximus has known of what's his name? Commodus since they were
Commodus,
boys.
since they were boys.
How have you never
Yeah,
been to Rome?
the whole thing hurts your head. It is the comedian Mark Maron calls it thinky pain, right? And that's what I feel a lot in this movie. Is there's thinky pain that you're stretching, and you're like, and this is not even a big philosophical thing. It's just what I don't get it. How is it
What?
possible? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's a confusing one. Anyway,
it is.
Caesar continues saying that he is dying, and when a man gets to the end of his life, he wants to know what he has become. Will I
Mm,
be known as a philosopher, a warrior,
mm,
a tyrant,
mm.
emperor who gave Rome back to her true self? Marcus Aurelius, I would like to let you know, in whatever grave you're in, you were known as a philosopher.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. Exactly.
Now, there was once a dream, and that was Rome. You could
Mm,
only whisper it, anything more than a whisper, and it would vanish. It was
mm,
fragile.
mm,
Caesar lies down and whispers to Maximus and says, "Whisper, tell me about your home."
mm,
So Maximus does. He tells him, it's a house on the hills above Trujillo. Simple place, pink stones that warm in the sun, kitchen garden that smells of herbs in the day, jasmine in the evening. Through the
mm,
gate, we have a giant poplar, figs, apples, pears, soil Marcus black like his wife's hair,
mm,
grapes on the south slope, olives on the north slope, wild ponies that play nearby and tease his son because he wants to be one.
mm.
Couple things. Um, One, that sounds lovely. That sounds so
Yeah,
good.
sounds amazing. Absolutely.
Marcus Black?
So, so just we're gonna leave it here. But black is his wife's hair, right? Is that what you're referring to, where he says that about the soil?
No, he says
No.
soil Marcus Black like my wife's hair.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that's the line. It's yeah.
Or
So
did I mishear the line
yes,
in the
there's a couple
subtitles
spots
or
where the
what?
audio look again. Nothing's perfect. There's a couple spots where the audio's like, so being older, and I know a lot of people that are hearing impaired like to have I like to have subtitles because
I
sometimes audio.
always have
No, I
subtitles on.
love it, and people are like, "Oh, it's so distracting." I'm like, not at all. Once you get used to, because I used to love to watch foreign films, and I say foreign to the U.S., and they were in another language, and from the time I was young, I loved other films, and I would watch them with subtitles so I could understand what was being said. And to me, once you get it just blends. You don't even notice it. It's like the brain has this amazing ability to absorb that. So I think you misheard the line. That's not what he says.
Okay,
Now,
that
I,
makes a
I
lot
can't
more
recall at this moment
sense.
what he actually says, but I don't think that's the line.
Hey, listeners, if anybody knows, let me know because I'm pretty sure Marcus Black is not the right thing. because I was like, why are we saying someone's name before black?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. Cool. That answers that. Two, I love the fact that his son wants to be a pony.
Pony,
It's so
absolutely.
wholesome.
No, I love it. It is. It is like this bright, not, I don't want to say bright, but like a bright, peaceful moment in the midst of all this. And I think even Marcus Aurelius asked him, is like, we'll talk as men. Let's talk about real things, right? We're always talking about Rome. We're always talking about battle. We're always talking about this. Let's talk about the real things. And he talks about his wife and his kid and his home. And sorry. Anyway,
No.
but it's his son, because I've got my son's 19 and he's got a lot of challenges, and just how important that is. How important the real things are when everything else fades away. What's really important, right?
Yeah.
All the pretense and everything else, and all the constructs go away. What's really important, and but it's an absolutely beautiful moment, whimsical for his son. And I remember my kids at that age where you could be anything. You could be a frog, you could be a horse, you could be a tree, you could be, whatever.
It's why I became an actor. I couldn't pick one thing.
Yes, no, beautiful. You can be many. You can live many lives, right?
I was like, I get to learn about everything.
Yes.
Now, he asks, when was the last time you were home? 2 years, 264 days, and this morning.
He knows. Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah.
Caesar envies him. A good home, worth fighting for? It is. Caesar says that he has one more duty he must ask of Maximus before he goes home. And Caesar wants him to become the protector of Rome after he dies. And Caesar wants him to give power back to the people of Rome and the corruption that has crippled it.
Yeah.
And Caesar asks if he will accept this great honor. And, Maximus is taken aback by this. He is surprised. But also, he is honored that, he has been given this. And he just says, with all my heart, no. And Caesar says, that's why it must be you. Maximus says, what about a senator, a prefect, someone who understands the city, knows her politics?
Right.
And I just go, that's why he wants someone different. You haven't been tainted by corruption yet.
Yes.
And then I hit play, and the next line was, it has to be you. You haven't been corrupted. And I was like, oh, look, I can write a script.
Yes.
Commodus is not a moral man. And this is where the other thing comes in. He just goes, Maximus, you have known this since you were young. Then why have you never been to Rome?
Right. Again, it brings back, and so it's such a small thing, but it does hurt the mind at that point. It's like, if he knows all this, but he doesn't know all this, and picks somebody else, and it has to be you. You haven't been, and he's never been to Rome. It does. It hurts the brain. That whole sequence.
It hurts. Anyway, Caesar tells Maximus that he is the son that he should have had. Commodus will accept my decision. He knows you command the loyalty of the army. And I'm like, I see the problem.
Yes.
He ain't gonna accept the decision.
Yes.
Maximus asks for time. Caesar says yes. By sunset, I hope you agree. They embrace, and Caesar says, embrace me as my son, and bring an old man another blanket.
Yes.
This is as far as I have seen. This is what I think is going to happen.
Yes.
Caesar ain't going to wake up. Nobody is going to know that this conversation has happened. Nobody is going to know that Maximus was offered the position. And so it is going to go to Commodus immediately. He's going to get power hungry. For some reason, call Maximus back into whatever it is. And then because Maximus disobeys in some way, shape, or form, he gets tossed into, I guess, like the ring as the gladiators do. And then he goes on a win streak.
So you're not 100% correct, but you got the vibe. You got where it's headed. There's details in there and things that happen that are
I guarantee
critical, but you've got a good sense of where we're headed for sure. Yeah.
At least that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, look, most of this show is me being confused or me being wrong. So
all good. Yeah.
That is the majority of my predictions. Very rarely am I right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the end of this episode because I legitimately have not seen more of this film to be able to have more of a discussion.
Nice.
But Michael, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on as the guest. Thank you so much for joining.
For sure.
If there's anything you want to tell the people, the floor is yours. Any message you want to leave
Sure.
them with?
Yeah, no. First of all, thank you for having me on. Very grateful. A wonderful opportunity, and just thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Absolutely. I think the only thing I'd say is that it's what we talked about a minute ago. Is that there's so much more, because even if you look at kind of the politics that's emphasized there, and there's a new Gladiator 2 coming out, and these things are human conditions, right? All the fighting and the warring and the jockeying for position, but what's great about this film is just the emphasis of it is a philosophical thing. It is a contemplative thing of what's really important. What does it mean to be a leader? What's it mean to be a man? Those types of things. What does it really mean? So I just, for me, that's the beauty of it. That's why I keep coming back to it. And I think, it's worth that exploration, but even in just the day to day, being able to find, go back to the moment with the bird. It's
Mm-hmm.
so strange. He's in this burnt out battlefield, and it's like he notices the bird. And so for me, I'm learning to, even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, show up for myself, be there for myself, and have that moment where I'm like, what's really important to me? Let that motivate me for the rest of my day, rather than just jumping in headlong. And I get to the end of my day and it's not what I wanted. And that's a good way to end up at the end of your life not being what you wanted. So I just think it's so important to take even just 5 minutes a day to center yourself and kind of be present, if you will. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you've gotten
Mm,
this far, if you're on YouTube, whatever app you're on, make sure you just hit the subscribe button, follow button, tell a friend about the show. Helps us out a lot. But Michael, thank you so much.
mm.
Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to join us next week where Michael, you'll be back as our
Yes.
guest. And we will continue the conversation and figure out what's going on because I don't know. I'm assuming Commodus gets power, but we're going to find out next week. And until then, I'll catch y'all later. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale. I hope you are all enjoying this episode, and if you want to gain access to more bonus content, like access to my notes and access to some of the tier lists that I make and help suggest films and things like that, all of that can be done over at our Patreon, and that can be found at patreon.com/coopforge. So that's patreon.com/co_OPFORGE. Signing up for any of the tiers gets you different types of bonus content depending on the tier that you sign up for, and a shout out here on the show for every patron that signs up. It really means the world to us, and it helps us grow this show and helps us be able to put the money back into this show to make it a better experience for you, the listeners. That is our entire goal here at Co-op Forge. So thank you all so much if you are considering doing this. Now, if you want to help the show in a non-monetary way, that is fantastic as well. You can do so by just talking about us and sharing it with a friend. Just reach out to a friend and be like, hey, you love movies, or hey, you need an excuse to watch more movies. Check out this show called Post Finale. The host is silly, he's an actor, he's confused most of the time, gets a lot of guesses wrong, but overall it's a lovely time and some interesting discussions about some iconic films. I think you'll really enjoy it. It really does help. And be sure to talk about us on social media and follow us on social media. That really helps out a lot as well. If you're looking for the show, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Post Finale Pod. And then you can also find us at Co-op Forge on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And that's at Co-op Forge at CO_OPFORGE. And we post content not just from Post Finale, but from the other shows here on Co-op Forge as well. So that includes Flip the Scripts and that includes Seattle Across the Pond. So be sure follow both of those channels. Again, it's at Post Finale Pod and at Co-op Forge, CO_OPFORGE. But just thank you so much for listening to this episode. Wherever you are, if you're enjoying the episode, if you're listening on YouTube, please please hit subscribe. It really does help us out. If you're listening on a podcast app, that's great as well. It doesn't matter to us where you're listening. We're just so thankful that you're listening. But if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating. It really does help us out. Please leave a review and hit that follow button. You can also turn on notifications both on YouTube and on the podcast apps just to be notified when new episodes come out. It really does mean a lot that you are all listening to these episodes, and thank you all so much. So let's get back to the episode without further ado.